everybody. Welcome to Spill the Novelty, where three girlies shout into the void about our latest book hot takes and obsessions. I'm Abby.
I'm Maddie.
And I'm Kaylee.
And this week we're spilling the tea about the highly anticipated new release, Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros. If you've read Fourth Wing and have been frothing at the mouth for more Xaden like we have, you've come to the right place. Since this book has just released, we're actually going to do something a little different here and skip out on the summary this time. And instead, we're going to hop right into the tea, because that's what we're all really here for, right? Mm-hmm. And please note that we will be spoiling this book. So if you haven't finished reading Iron Flame, please stop and go finish that and then come back.
Yeah, it is immediately not safe for you. Leave this place.
This is not a safe space for no spoilers. So
last chance. Please leave. We don't want you here.
And then come back.
Come back next week and listen to the episode.
Please. All right, so in this book, we're back at Basgiath for year 2. So after all of the drama in book 1 during war games, air quotes, the team just kind of returns to Basgiath for graduation, and they lie about what happened, and they go on with their lives. So this shocked me. I was a little disappointed about the lead up to them returning, and then it being like basically nothing. But on the other hand, I was pretty happy about them being back at Basgiath. Like, it was a familiar kind of setting, and I like Basgiath a lot. I think it's a fun setting. So I think this also, like, helped build the tension between Violet and Xaden with them being separate. And we know how much I love a good tension build.
I love that. I loved the seeing each other a week apart and, like, the weekends where they couldn't see each other, and you were like, oh, no. So
yes.
Good.
Yeah.
And, like, to know, too, those moments where, like, they would find out that they were going to be seeing each other for whatever reason, and that just, like, crushed the entire week. Just,
yeah.
Like, I felt that. I'm like, you know, having been in a long-distance relationship myself, I can't imagine going through that in the middle of a war, so...
Yeah, no, literally. And
in the middle of, something like this. Dragons are bonded.
Yeah, there were parts where Violet was, like... something would happen and she would be like, the only person I want to talk to right now is Xaden. And like,
yeah,
that is just so relatable too, because it's like, you know, they're your best friend and like your most trusted person, and so to not be able to see them or talk to them even, oof.
Yeah. And it also helped it not be so over, like their love wasn't so like overwhelming throughout the book, because we got it in small doses. Because like sometimes in books, like once the two characters get together, it's like they're all lovey-dovey and everything's all happy and it's just like everything's great. But instead, like they would see each other and they would argue, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Mm-hmm. But they weren't seeing each other all the time, which
it's nice.
It was great.
And I think too, just to go back to us being like back at Basgiath, I was also a bit disappointed or maybe just underwhelmed with like, oh, life is just gonna go back to normal, like we're just going to school. But Violet also feels that same way, and so it made it less weird for some reason, because it was like being acknowledged in the story where Violet was like, y'all just expect me to like go back to class, and they were like, yeah, like don't do anything. And so of course she still finds ways to like be useful, so I think it made it less weird because it was, I don't know, like acknowledged even to the characters. They were like, this is fucking weird. And it was like, well, this is what we're doing. So like,
well, I think it's realistic in the sense that like, I think my first assumption was that she was just going to stay and not go back to Basgiath for a while. And I think I was shocked at how quickly they returned. But I will say, I did love the drama of them coming back on graduation day. Like they, you know, just like, oh, you thought this was going to be about all of you graduating first year or whatever the hell. No, actually, you thought we were all dead and we're just going to walk in.
Yeah, we're those badasses.
Your graduation.
Confronting Colonel Atos in front of like God and everybody and embarrassing that man. I was like,
the drama.
I still felt like it was underwhelming. Like there was not enough drama for that to be like they should have been they should have been battling each other. Like there should have been something.
Yeah, I do think just kind of took it in stride a little too much.
Yeah. And I feel like Violet didn't acknowledge it enough. Maddie, kind of like, I don't know, kind of against what you were saying. Like, I think she wasn't acknowledging it enough. She wasn't thinking about the whole Vin and Wyvern thing or the War Games thing. Like, she wasn't even thinking about it. She was thinking about Xaden and her relationship and, like, the people around her.
I think that's fair. And so I think for me, I gave it a pass. But where it became too much was when we escape Basgiath and we steal half the cadets, and then we go to wherever the other fucking place is. Is it Tyrandor? I don't even know the name of the other place. And then we just go back to school. Arisha, yeah. And then it's just back to school and class. And I was like, that's fucking weird. Like, we can't rely on the school structure forever in this book. We have to be able to, like, do something else. Like, even if it's war training, but still having it be school structure and classes and cadets and years and, like, sectors. I'm like, can y'all not adapt at all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
But I guess some of it, though, too, like, I think the big concern once they go to Arisha is, like, you know, with all the bunch of the writers are, they're not fully trained. You know, they could be a liability not only to themselves but to everyone else. So I agree where it's kind of weird that they hop back into a class structure, but on the other hand, it's like you have all these kind of untrained or people that, you know, that aren't ready to fight off Venin and Wyvern and all this, and you're having to kind of figure out, like, okay, well, I guess we're going to class. It's like those memes. Have y'all seen the memes? It's like when you got class at 6, but you know something is 7. Like when you got battle brief at 6, but you got to go defeat a horde of Wyvern at 8. You know, like
No, actually.
That's true.
Well, and I think too, like, it made sense for the classes that were like, you need to learn how to fight against Venin specifically because it's very different. And so, like, that makes sense as, like, a class or training session, or the one where they all started learning runes, which, like, people didn't even know, like, existed in Navarre. Like, that makes sense to me. It's, like, a little weirder when they just have, like, battle brief. And I'm like, what's happening?
The runes were so boring to me. I'm like, I've seen runes in so many other books. Like, I've played RuneScape. Come on.
They're not special. I don't know. I kind of like the runes as like another, you know, kind of a side note, but as like another form of power. And the fact that like Xaden was like giving her the little thing to like.
That was cute. I knew there must have been a reason.
Yeah. I don't know. What was she doing? Was she like?
It was like fabric knots or something.
Okay. Yes, I was doing like as if I'm like
crocheting.
Yes, yes. Yeah, the little knots. That's what it was.
But then, so when they mentioned that he left the thing, I was confused a little bit because like she never mentioned that she was actually doing it, and then in the end she was like, "Oh, I get why you did that. Like I practiced," and I was like, "Bitch, did you? Because you didn't talk about it when like not even like a passing mention of like." Me practicing my fabric knots, like I don't know. It felt it did feel a little, to your point, Kaylee. It felt a little bit like thrown in there as an added layer of complexity, rather than like something that was fully fleshed out. And even I was confused, like, and maybe one of y'all understand it, so you can explain it to me better. But like later in the book, I think Xaden is saying like his mark has runes in it that like protected him from the whoever like kills his parents, but then I was like, so did he get the mark after he as a punishment, or was it a protect? Like I didn't really understand fully like what that scene meant in terms of like what we had thought previously.
Yeah, I was confused by that too, so I can't
I think it was protection, but I'm not 100% sure. Because I know what you're talking about. I think it's protection from his parents and from like the parents of all the.
So it wasn't actually like a punishment that they gave him. It was a protective thing that the Tirish did to their kids, right? Because that's how I felt like I understood it. But I was like, that's crazy because that's not how it's explained at all previously. So like, history literally is incorrect on like every front. Like that's wild for that to be a misconception.
A giant theme in this book.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was crazy.
Yeah, no, that was crazy. And well, and I think that kind of theme too of history not being accurate comes up a lot too with switching gears a little bit to like Violet as a whole, right? Mm-hmm. Like she obviously her growth or in some ways I think Maddie kind of noted like ungrowth in a way, like her having to really confront like her emotions, right? Like she's made all this progress her first year and has become so powerful and everything, and then this year she's like visibly shaken from the discoveries of the last book, from Liam's death. She's lacking confidence. She's unsure of herself, and she's really having to question everything that she thinks she does know. So that moment you're mentioning is a great example of like something that even us as readers, we think that we know because it's like set up in book one, and
Yeah.
we're very quickly having to question all of it, much like Violet. So yeah, Violet spends so much of this book feeling guilty about her friends that she's seen die, right next to her, and she's really second guessing her choices. And I felt like this growth was really like great and realistic, right? Because even if she has a really great first book where she's growing as this character and everything, it makes sense that she's dealing with grief, she's dealing with trauma, and that she's going to not be able to just ignore those things and continue on, right?
I saw a lot of people saying that they found this part like super annoying, which is very confusing to me because I think it takes me back to like the Hunger Games when it was first coming out. And it's like, I feel like now we look back on the Hunger Games as like it was written really well with like a main character that like obviously is struggling with a lot of PTSD because Katniss is just like, like Gail and Peeta are like, which one of us do you love? And she's like, my brothers in Christ. Like, I have other worries.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I felt about this, where like, obviously Violet is a little bit more like romance focused than Katniss was, but like, she's not just magically okay after everything that's happened. And there's even a point where Xaden calls out like, how would you be okay? Like your entire foundation, everything that you built your beliefs off of was incorrect, and you're like rebuilding from the ground up. Like you shouldn't feel confident, like you shouldn't be okay right now. Like, and he even says like, I'm not okay, like no one is okay, like we're just going.
And anyone who's sitting there saying that like Violet being insecure and having these issues like is annoying, like I feel like they're just not being empathetic. Like, have you never been insecure, or have you never like gone through something that changed the way that you thought about things, like reframe the way you were thinking and feeling? Like, because that's what's happening to Violet, and like you just have to be empathetic towards what's happening because she's a real human with real emotions.
Yeah, and like what does she have to feel secure about on the flip side? It's like everything that she's known, right? Like she's watching those closest to her die. She's not sure how much she can trust Xaden because he's kept so much of this from her in the first book. She can't trust Basgiath. She doesn't know, and because of that, she doesn't know like these next few years that she thought would be so predictable and just finishing out her education there and moving on and become a writer. Like she can't trust that anymore. She sees Brennan, and even if she's excited, she can't trust everything that she's known. So like on what foundation would she have this trust, right? Like, so
even Taryn, right? Because Taryn knew Brennan was alive, and so she even has moments where she's like, are you telling me everything that you can be telling me, like, so she has all these big questions and not a lot of answers. I don't know, I just feel like it's just very realistic. And also, I don't want to say like people are blindly following her, but she has a lot of friends that are extremely loyal to her, to the point where if she says I'm doing X, they're like, me too, bestie. And the problem is that she knows that X, the like probability of survival is like 5%. And so for her to not at every stage say, I have this responsibility because I know, for example, Rian and Riddick and Sawyer are going to follow me wherever I go. And I don't necessarily want them to risk their lives to do that. Her weighing that makes me like her more, because it shows that she values her friends and their loyalty and doesn't just want them to like blindly follow her. Like she should weigh that responsibility. That's a big deal.
Yeah, she's going through so many painful things. I mean, and also like side stuff too, like obviously Mira gets involved a lot in this book, but I think in the wake of finding out that Brennan's alive, which is of course great news, and her getting closer to Brennan, like she then has to wonder, like, is Mira going to join our side? Where does the general stand in all this? Where does our mother stand in this? Like, even for every moment she has of this little victory, her and Xaden get close, and then Kat comes into the picture. Like, girl can't catch a break. She really cannot.
This whole book. She
She can't get
cannot.
3 seconds of just peace.
No.
And
So,
also, like, yeah, and also she finds out Zayden's been keeping all these secrets, which kind of brings us to like talking a little bit more about their relationship, because
yeah.
like we start out the book and Violet feels like really betrayed by Zayden's secrets, and then throughout the majority of the story, she's kind of trying to figure out whether she can trust him again or not. And then we find out he's keeping another secret from her, and then another secret from her. And so it's like every time she builds that trust up again, she feels like she can't trust him, and we just go through the same kind of thing happening over and over again.
Yeah.
And it all like really affects her, even though he thinks that these secrets are like separate from her. So yeah.
Yeah,
What did you guys?
I think this was done like super well in my opinion, because it was that constant push and pull, and it wasn't just the one instance where he didn't share information with her, right? Like you said, Kaylee, it's like, okay, they get to a point where she can kind of come to terms with that, and then something else comes up, and she's like, my brother in Christ. And then he says, like, well, you didn't ask, which is like, I mean, I think we all like can roll our eyes at that, because but also for what it's worth, that is such a dude thing to say. Like, it's so real. But
it's also borderline gaslighting, I feel like.
It's not the best, for sure, because it absolves him of all responsibility.
Well, and I think that in his head, he thinks of it as like a way to protect her, right? And like he doesn't have to, in another way, like maybe not, dump all this information on her when so much is already going on, right? So I think there's probably these ways that he probably rationalizes that decision. But yeah, Omega eye roll for me. I was like, yeah.
I will.
And if I were in that situation, I wouldn't want to ask. Like, I would just expect my partner to tell me these things, like, be forthcoming about it. Like, I found it a little bit toxic. Honestly, like, I just thought it was a little bit toxic. I'm like, why can't you just come out and tell her these things? Like,
especially because she proved because I think it's one thing if, especially considering they're in the midst of war and whatnot, like, it's one thing if you're unsure of the other person's loyalties, right? But I think she proved her loyalty quite a bit in the end of Fourth Wing. I mean, the entire last 20% of the book, a little bit more, is her basically being willing on a whim to throw away everything that she knows and trust him and trust the rebels, and basically like give up everything that she thought she knew and side with him, right? So it's like I think that she's proven her loyalty. So withhold information from her. But I did like that conflict, though. I did.
I think the conflict was written really well, because besides when it got more into like that flavor, for the most part, I could kind of see both sides of the argument. Like, particularly when he was saying, like, there are some things about the revolution, like things that we're doing, that I cannot tell you. For one, for your safety, and for two, because you don't have shield ability right now. Like, I literally, it's unsafe for me to share this on multiple levels. And so there were a lot of arguments that they had, or disagreements, I guess I should say, even when they're talking about like one of the things is like Violet decides to go start looking into the ward stones and trying to figure out how to activate them, and Xaden is like, you're fucking crazy, like this is really unsafe, whatever. Like, that argument, I can see why Xaden is arguing what he's arguing, and I'm like, I kind of do agree, it is crazy, it is unsafe. And Violet's like, this is the only way we're gonna succeed, and I'm like, you're right, sister, like we have to take risks. So there were a lot of really good conflicts where it wasn't very obviously one side is right or one side is like mad for no reason or whatever. But I will say also, on the same topic of the like you need to ask the questions, every time she asked a question and he was like, look at you asking questions, good job, I was like, that's a little condescending. Like, do we have to do that?
I'm like, she is so smart. Like, her whole thing is her scribe background. Like, she eats up everyone, okay, when it comes to just being smart. So like bro, we don't know to ask about you having a second signet.
Girl, who would ask?
Who the fuck would ask that?
Yeah.
Crazy.
One good thing we got from all their conflict, though, was the letters that he writes her. I mean, come on, that had me like, smiling, blushing.
Yeah,
like,
kicking my
but
feet.
we didn't get to read the letters. We just got tiny little excerpts at the beginning of some
I do
chapters,
wish
and I'm
we would
like,
get
come
more.
on, Rebecca, we want the letters. We want to read all of them.
Yeah.
Like,
Here we go. See here, if she's putting out a special edition of this book, let's do it with consistent sprayed edges if we're gonna do that, and then B, let's go ahead and put those letters in there, girly pop. I want to see those. Add it to the back of the book. I want to read them.
I want to know the Xaden lore, because it all seemed like super wholesome lore too. Like, just, this is where I like to sit and like whatever. It was like so fucking cute. Like, I could not. I was overwhelmed.
It was so cute. Okay, but can I just say, I don't know if you guys felt like this, but some of the not the letters, but some of the dialogue with Xaden was a little bit cringe. It was a little cringe, and please don't hate me for saying that, but sometimes he would say these big, like, I love you monologues, and I'd be like, okay, would Xaden really say that? Like, badass Xaden, would he really say that? Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, that was our platform that we record on, having a moment.
It happens.
You gotta watch this on so sorry.
On YouTube, yeah.
If you follow us on, this is why we recommend check us out on YouTube. You'll get stuff like that. I'm not gonna explain it any further. Anyway.
Yeah, I agree, Kaylee. And like, part of that for me too is I almost feel like Xaden got a little oversimplified in this book, because he gets very like one directional about like, Violet is everything to me, and he says several times like, I don't give a fuck about anything else anymore, like, I just want you to be safe and you to be okay. And I get that it's very romantic, whatever, but also I still want Xaden to be his own character with his own motivations and priorities, because it's not giving, you know. If he's just her little like pet dog that like will do whatever for her, it's not as exciting as like in the first book, where they had lots of conflict because he had all these things that he was doing off to the side about these other people that he cared for, and sometimes that didn't always like turn out the best for Violet, you know. But that's interesting, that's real life, that's people, that's how it works.
I do love to see a man grovel though.
Yes, I do love the yearning, the groveling.
That's the worshipping. I love it. I love
that. Yeah. No.
We love Xaden, but sometimes it was just a little too much.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, part of it.
I have no words.
I am deceased. Okay. So what I was going to say, I think too, I can think of an example when it's done well, because I know exactly what you're talking about, Kaylee, and I agree. I think sometimes it's because it's the thing that sometimes I think authors will do where they're, things that they wouldn't put in dialogue, like if they're describing like people's physical reactions to things, but then they do put it in dialogue, saying like, you know, talking about the look on your face or something like that, like then it becomes across as like, no one would actually say this. It's just how you're describing a reaction, right? The only time I do remember one time where it's done really well, which is the quote about, or this is around the time where he's talking about like how fast can someone fall out of love, and then he's talking about seeing the distress. There's something all over her face. Like I don't remember what the exact line is, but he says something there when he can just like see the pain. So that's a little bit more dramatic, but he has this line about I can see it all over your face, and like that one.
And it's also appropriate for the moment, right? Because I think sometimes in the dialogue, it's like, I mean, they're in constant danger, whatever. There's a lot of drama and like conflict that happens throughout the book. But sometimes it's like, you're feeling a little passionate right now for like what went on, versus like that scene that you're talking about, Abby. It's like, that's appropriate for like what just happened. Like that's correct.
Like that's the relationship ending moment potentially. You know, that could be the
sometimes end. It's just like Violet getting hurt, and it's like not even that bad of an injury, and then he's like, no,
I know exactly. Yeah, sometimes it's a little much, but I do love to see a man grovel. So.
Yeah, we do love to see a man grovel. I just want Xaden to keep his spice, okay? And
then, we want him to still be a badass. Come on.
I want him to be a bad boy still. Well,
I think he is though. He still has a lot of these like very like she'll talk about like, I think there's one scene, I can't remember what's happening, but she says like the Xaden I'm looking at is not like, the Xaden she's in love with, like, it's like the wing leader. Like, he still, I think,
yes.
maintains,
Yeah, he has his moments.
Or like he has like these more like spicy, flirty moments with her, where like even when it's not just like him being like a golden retriever, it's him saying some shit that got me blushing and kicking my feet and shit,
Yeah. He has good banter, much more banter than like other books that we've read.
Yeah, agreed.
We love Xaden. Oh, I shouldn't have said that because it's gonna trigger it again.
Oh no.
You're right.
But besides Xaden and Violet's like constant push and pull as they reconfigure their entire relationship, we also have like a lot of, like I said, like a lot of conflict throughout the rest of the book, a lot of classic antagonists. And I think for me, like my personal favorite was Varish, who he's this like, he's a grown man. He's like a colonel or something maybe. But he replaces Daddy Atos at Basgiath. And he immediately is like, I fucking hate Violet and I'm going to make her miserable in every way I can. And he really does. And it was such a good villain moment because he had power over her because he was like a professor or teacher or whatever. And so he could like literally force her to do things. Like at one point he almost makes her burn out and die as a punishment for like something that like she essentially had no choice in. And I really liked that dynamic. And also I loved that so Varish's dragon is named Solus, and Solus has one eye, and we find out that Taryn took the other one out. And so I loved that there was deep lore between Taryn and this other dragon, and because it also reminds you like these dragons have been around each other for hundreds of years. Of course they have deep lore. Of course they have beef with each other.
Yeah, girls are fighting. Like, beef. Yeah, capital B, beef.
Yeah.
No, I also loved to hate Varish. He's so vile, and like I agree, and I think that like particularly the interrogation. I know the interrogation scene is just like, ooh, like I remember as soon as I realized kind of going into that chapter that this was going to be like the interrogation chapter, like I was already bracing myself because I was, the thought of like an interrogation scene is already so stressful considering everything that Violet is having to keep in. I mean, it's like a pressure cooker, like one wrong move and everything is over, right? So I agree that I think it's way more interesting to have someone who is like a professor or a figure of like a powerful figure at like someone who has that power over her and can make her do that, versus Jack with year one. Like I think he's just an annoyance. Like we'll get in more of that in a minute, but he's just annoying. Okay, mostly, but yeah, Varish is a very real threat. So
and Jack has no reason to hate Violet in the first book. He just hates her. So like it doesn't really make sense. But Varish hates Violet because he's suspicious of her. Yeah. And he thinks that she's hiding something constantly.
And she
is. She is. She is. And they're on opposite sides of a war, essentially. And I think he kind of knows that. And so I don't know, it just adds to the real stakes of it. You're like, okay, he might actually really hurt her,
Yeah. Well, and I think the fact that he can't break her is so, because I think, adding on to the fact that because he's a powerful figure, like he should be able to abuse if he can't overpower her in other ways, he should be able to use his authority to somehow break her. And he can't even do that. And I think that eats him up. It makes him angry. He does irrational things because of it. Other professors notice it and they tell him off because of it. Like,
and it's not to mention, Abby, the big moment where he this is after he makes Violet almost burn out the first time, and he threatens basically to do it again. And Taryn is like, fuck you. And so he goes and he takes Solace's throat in his mouth and is actively crunching and making Solus bleed, and Varish is like, holy shit, hold on, brother, because obviously Varish would die if Solus dies, and he knows Taryn doesn't give a fuck about Solus, so it's and Taryn makes Varish get on his knees and apologize to Violet. First of all, loved it. Loved Taryn actually throwing his weight around, because we get all this context the whole time about how he's this bad bitch dragon, everyone's scared of him, but he's very measured and
He keeps it
reserved.
together. Yes.
And so I loved seeing him like lose his mind and actually like exert control over the situation. But yeah, I mean, I don't blame Varish for hating Violet after that. Like that shit, I cannot imagine how angry and embarrassing, and like it was so good.
What's funny about that scene though is like imagine that they actually can't hear what Taryn is saying. Like nobody can hear what Taryn and Solus are saying. Like so they're just like
True.
watching this from an outside perspective, and it's silent, and this is happening. Like I don't know. I kind of think that's funny.
Me just eating my porridge in the dining hall, and I look out the window, and this is happening over on the building.
Not porridge.
Like, just being a student at Basgiath that's like not in Violet's circle at all, being like, there she goes again, that crazy bitch and her dragon. Like,
at some point, what the fuck are the rest of the students like? To be a fly on the wall, to be a nobody at this school during all this.
Yeah,
wow.
To just be in like first wing or whatever, just vibing, and then all this stuff is like passively happening, and you're like, can we not?
Yeah. You're just like, damn. Well, at least we got the tea, you know.
Yeah, true. Except they don't. Can you imagine how scary it is? They're like, what is going on? Like, I don't even know.
Yeah, what's happening? So speaking of antagonists, so I already said it. Like Jack, we felt this way in the first book. We were just like, he's just annoying. He's just.
I'm pretty sure we barely even talked about him in the Fourth Wing episode because he felt like a mosquito. Like.
Yeah, exactly. He's just and like he also just he's not interesting. Like I don't know. He's giving like
nothing.
He's a boy, like just
he's not a good villain.
No, he's giving out of the box villain. No customization.
Yeah.
Like it pulled him off the shelf. And so like in this book he like returns and he's like low-key like a big bad because he's the one that takes down the ward stone. And my issue with this is that this scene could have been really powerful if it was someone that we actually thought was good turning out to be Venom. But when Jack returns, because he gets mended by Nolan, when Jack returns, Violet is always sus of him, as she should be. And we get told like he's being good and he's acting so nice. He even saves Violet's life at one point. The professors like him more. But we don't get enough contact with him to really start to believe that he's turned over a new leaf. And Violet certainly doesn't. So there's no weight to like coming in and seeing Jack be like, I'm actually a villain. Because it's like, you always were. Like,
right, because he does, like, he's, you know, he saves her in that one scene, but like that's not enough because I think in her mind, because remember when she's like about to like fall off, like
the tower.
So many
well, it's Atos's assassins that try and kill her in the tower.
Yes, and then ultimately Jack saves her. But my thing is that, like you said, and I think she even has this quote about like now she owes Jack like 2 life debts, like because she's killed him and because he just saved hers, and so but like
he says they're even, which I also think is weird, and she's like, we're not even actually because I fucking killed your ass.
Yeah, and I just feel like that whole scene was weird anyway. But tying it to this one, like that because that scene gets lost, like I almost forgot that happened. It certainly isn't enough for by the time we get to the Wardstone, like for me to be like, oh my gosh, but I was starting to trust Jack. Like I forgot that happened. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, if this was Dane.
Yes, if it was Dane, if it was Rhiannon, come on, that would have ate. If it was Rhiannon the whole time, and that, because it would also make sense why she was bugging Violet so much about like, tell me what is going on, like tell me your secrets. It would put that in a whole new flavor because she was actually trying to get intel. Like there were so many options to make it more interesting than just like Jack, I don't know, being a fucking like. I just don't care. I don't know.
Even Nolan would have been a good one to do that with.
Totally. And I think too, like we have talked about, I don't know how many episodes now we've talked about hating like we call it like the resurrection trope. I don't know if it has a term, but I mean, I think the thing with Jack is essentially just that again, but just with a villain that we're not even that interested in. So I loved a lot of this book. The whole Jack thing was one of the things that I liked the least, just because I was like, kind of random and not necessary to do what needed to be done, you know?
Yeah.
And who didn't see it coming? Like, you know what I mean? Like, we all kind of saw the whole Jack Venom thing coming because, like, he was being mended all that time.
Right, he's treated like Frankenstein's damn monster. Like, you know, they're like, oh, Nolan's just working on this thing. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Like,
even
whatever.
like the thing that they built up with Nolan, for whatever reason, I just wasn't interested in that very much. Like, because they bring it up all the time in like the first half of the book, and they're like, Nolan's lead time for mending is like a week and a half. That's weird. And I'm like, okay.
They bring it up all the time. It happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think too that like I honestly would still be more interested. Like I was more interested in learning what Nolan's motivations were and like how he was his betrayal than I ever was about Jack coming back. Like Nolan betraying her hurt more and was more interesting, I think, than anything that happened with Jack.
Yeah.
Like,
although
or like one of her professors would have been a good betrayal too. Like one of her main professors that she loves. Like
like
the general or Markham.
One?
Yeah. I was trying to figure out which one that was. Yeah. I thought it was Immaterio for some reason, but yeah, I think you're right that it was Markham.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember what Immaterio does, but he comes with them to Aricia. So he's chill.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah. But
so that brings us to another antagonist, which is Catriona, aka Cat. She's Xaden's long-lost ex-betrothed / fiance. She's a Griffin writer, and she kind of just shows up like out of nowhere, and we learn about her and Xaden. And I personally, like, I loved Cat. Like, I loved seeing her come into the story. I thought she was a good antagonist, and it's realistic that Violet would be like insecure about Cat and X coming in, because who wouldn't be insecure about that? So I liked that little sprinkle.
Yeah, no, I loved to hate Cat, you know, like she quite literally like gets under Violet's skin, you know, like I did think her whole, do they call it, is hers a signet too, or is it just a pout? Like
that's a good question.
They had a different word for flyers. It's mind work, I think.
Oh,
is the term they use, because all of their signets or abilities are based on like mental stuff.
Right? Ooh, cool. So like her being able to get under Violet's skin and like heighten her emotions. I did, like, as kind of a side note, like I did find it really interesting when they had that, like when they spar.
Yeah, that was a good scene.
It was good.
I ate that up, and especially when I think that was really fun, not only for like the drama there, but and then for the scene with her and Xaden afterwards, which like, but then also for Xaden to basically talk to her and be like, hey, you know, she's not planting anything in your head, like she's just heightening what's already there. And I think that was a big moment for Violet to have to confront these feelings of like jealousy, insecurity about herself and everything that she was already kind of feeling about herself and about her relationship with Xaden. So anyway, I really liked Kat as a standalone kind of like, not villain, but like kind of, you know, I guess antagonist, but also because of what she kind of brought to light about Violet's character as well.
Yeah, I think she serves as like a really incredible, maybe not exactly a foil, but like she exposes what is and has been and probably will be Violet's weakness throughout the entire series, which is that Violet is very vulnerable to her emotions and to doing things in the moment and like following her kind of like her heart and whatever. And so for Kat to specifically have a power that can like take advantage of that weakness, I think is just like, it was a slay, honestly. And I was here for Kat. Honestly, the roast that she had for Violet, she ate Kat. She ate Violet up. And Violet had like, she had the one good retort where she's like, hey, you know how you taught Xaden the thing with his fingers?
The thing that Xaden does.
Yeah, which she ate with that, but that was really the only time she got one up on Kat.
She really didn't. Yeah.
My favorite was when Kat was talking and Violet was like, well, he was never like in love with you or whatever, and she was like, well, this isn't about love, Violet. And I just loved that part. Like I was like, she's
all like
such a good antagonist. Like
And I think too, like I liked that because again, and I'm here for the romance. It's probably like the primary thing I care about in a book, honestly. But
Yeah.
this book is very focused between Violet and Xaden and their relationship. And so I think something like that is good to remind Violet, like, there are bigger things in the world, and there are things that are like more important than like, I want him to be in love with me. I want the power that comes with Xaden. Like, girl, please, like, get it together.
By all means. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, something I really liked about this book in general is that kind of the same way we were talking about how like Violet's character, she has these kind of lapses, or she has these moments of like weakness and insecurity and things like that. Like, I think that this book progressed really well from book one, where it doesn't just like, launch into her and Xaden being this like power duo, and they just fight this war and nothing else goes on. Like, I love that we see these insecurities. I love that an ex enters the picture, and now that there's this like, that aspect to it. It's not just all this like very like serious wartime stuff. It's also just other things that are going to impact your relationship and your sense of self and your insecurity, or whatever. So yeah, I liked her a lot.
Yeah,
even if she pissed me off.
And I want to call out too that like as a trope kind of thing, the ex entering the picture is far from my favorite, because I think a lot of the times the like main girl character, they get kind of positioned as enemies to each other for like not a real reason a lot of the times, and she just like hates the ex, and then it becomes very catty and like not meaningful. And so I was really ready to kind of like hate this segment of the book that we were going into. And so I just want to like praise Rebecca Yarros for making it like fun and engaging, because Violet like literally does everything she can to be mature about the situation. Like, she talks herself down, like, don't be jealous, like, he has an ex, like, you have exes, it's not that big of a deal. And Kat is like, no.
Yeah. And they end up kind of on good terms towards the end too. Yeah. Like, Kat actually like cares about what happens to Violet, which is good. Like, we don't see that a lot in books. Like, we like seeing girls on girl, not girls on girls, but
girls on girl. We love seeing girls on girl.
girl hand holding.
Women supporting women.
That's what I was looking for. Yeah.
It's just women supporting women. Okay.
It took a while to get there, but you guys knew what I was trying to say.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
No, and I think the thing too, again, like going to what you were saying, Maddie, about giving some praise for like how the whole situation, or how this whole bit is written. Like, I think that there's a line where Violet is basically acknowledging that Kat is a lot like Xaden. Like, she says something about her being like the girl version of Xaden or something. Like, there's this line where she's talking about that. And so again, I think what it's doing is more than just like a petty little ex drama. It's confronting Violet with like having to look at herself and like, what does Xaden want from me? Like, why, what value do I give to him if he's withholding all this information from me and keeping all these secrets? Like, what does he actually want about me? Because I'm having a hard time seeing it, Right. So anyway, yeah, I liked it a lot.
Yeah. And when we're talking about ex-love interests, we surely have to talk about me being correct. We get a Dane redemption arc in this book, y'all.
You got a side eye from me about that.
Eye roll.
So as you may or may not know, I was kind of a Dane stan, and I didn't really understand like the full turn that he had in the end of the book, and I just thought like, oh, okay, that was kind of weird. But so in this book, Varish is like torturing Violet, and he summons Dane for the second time for some fucking reason, by the way. Lame.
Yeah, why didn't that happen twice?
Oh yeah, that was weird.
Save it for one big dramatic reveal, please.
Yeah.
Anyways, the second time that Dane is summoned, when Violet is like actually genuinely being tortured, Varish basically like manipulates Dane or convinces him, whatever, to like read Violet's memories, and Violet forces her memories of like what actually happened with the wyvern and not the griffins, the wyvern and the venom and blah blah blah, to show Dane the truth. And Dane ends up being like, I fucked up, and helps her escape, and kind of then joins the revolution. And I was here for it. I think it was handled really well. For me, I always felt like Dane wasn't evil. He's just stupid. Like, he's just a himbo, and he loves rules because he cannot think critically about anything. He doesn't want to have to think critically. He likes black and white, right and wrong, and he didn't. I just think he's stupid, and he thought he was saving Violet by tattling, and then when he realizes that his dad is literally like Satan, he's like, damn, that's not what I'm about, you know?
No, I'm not normally the type to admit when I'm wrong, but I will give it to you because I am here for the thought of Dane just being a himbo. Okay, yeah. Like I'm here for one thing about me. I love just having the dude in the book is just your token himbo. Okay, and I so all this to say, like, yeah, I did not like him at all in the first book because he just was just a rule follower for the sake of it. Which maybe that's just because, you know, I guess because he's 1 year ahead of Violet, right? So he would have been a second year in the book. So, like, you know, it kind of makes you think of, like, earlier on, maybe in, like, high school or something, like, you're just getting started, like, and then by the time it's your senior year, you don't give a shit, right? You're just going with the flow. So I was, like, maybe writing it off as just, like, oh, he's just a, you know, goody two shoes, you know, good student, whatever. But yeah, I think it makes sense that no, maybe he thought he was doing the right thing and he was just wrong and he was just stupid and he wasn't thinking it through. But he did, yeah, he grew on me in this book. I will never be, let me say it now. I'm going to say this now. And then in 10 years, when book 5 or whatever comes out, we can do this.
Well, in 6 months at the rate that Rebecca is going, honestly.
In 3 months.
Yeah, okay, can you hear me?
Hopefully.
Hang on. I will never be a Dane and Violet shipper.
No.
I
won't either.
Is anyone? Okay. If you are, please don't listen to our podcast.
Yeah. Or do, and then just tell us why, let us know why you are. You got to give a pretty compelling reason at this point. Because a himbo's job is just to be there and look hot and be fun and be there. So I don't ship him with Violet, but I'm here for it. You know? Yeah,
and Dane does a great job at that in the second half of the book. I mean, there's like one conversation he has with Violet where he's like, do you love Xaden? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, say less. I'm with you, sister. Like, and that's cool. As simple as he is. Like, I'm telling you, my homeboy may have 2 brain cells to rub together, and I love it for him because that's who we need, okay? We just need him to be there and be big and bulky and, you know, support Violet. Uncomplicated, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I loved the Dane redemption arc. Like, I was here for it, and I was not a Dane fan. I was a Dane hater.
You were from like page 1
during the first book, and I found myself rooting for him and Violet's friendship, just their friendship, which shows just like how well written his redemption arc was. Because like, if it wasn't well written, I would still be here hating Dane. So
same. I was definitely prepared to hate Dane even more. And somehow, you know, he just he grew on me. So
yeah.
I will not be shipping him, but he grew.
I was like, to be clear.
But yeah, he grew on me.
Yeah, he grew on me. And also another person that grew on me this book was Violet's mom. I was a Violet's mom hater, and her name is Lilith, so I'll just refer to that way. I was a Lilith hater. She reminded me too much of like the mom that will never be satiated, will never be happy, and like I was convinced that Violet would continue like vying for her mom's attention and she would never get it, and that would be kind of like a lesson that Violet gets. But actually, relatively early in the book, Violet's mom kind of reveals herself as being, I don't want to say softer, but softer for her kids, and that she cares a lot more about Violet than even like Violet even realized. And she ends up like even aiding them in the rebellion and like letting Mira leave to go join the revolution. And then at the end of the book, she dies. She not only dies, but she sacrifices herself. Let her have this, Kaylee. Violet is about to sacrifice herself because it's Violet, of course she is. And then Lilith is like, not my daughter, and she forces Violet away from the thing. and she makes Liam's little sister Sloane like siphon her energy into the ward stone instead to like power the ward stone. Hers and Aimser's, her dragon, and they die, and that's how it works, and it's crazy. I did tear up for Violet and Mira and Brennan. Yeah, because they were so sad.
Up for that?
Yeah, their reactions. What? Brennan like being like close to death and trying to like stumble over to like mend her. That was emotional, man.
Aw. Well,
especially because Brennan was like low-key.
Sorry, that was rude. That was a rude.
Well,
I regret it.
Well, it's so sad.
In typical Maddie Kaylee fashion, I completely felt differently. Like we all saw it coming. Like we knew General Sorrengail was gonna sacrifice herself. Like there was no surprise.
I don't know if I saw it coming.
I thought she would die.
I totally saw that coming. Like I don't know, because I feel like that's what always happens in books, like with the parent. Like I'm trying to think what other book that happened in, but there was another book I read where like the dad sacrifices himself for his daughter. Maybe it was in, I don't know, but anyway, I saw it coming.
Even her little excerpt didn't get you, where it was like, I forget what it was, but it was like, I told them like if I ever died, it wouldn't be for my country, it would be for my children. That didn't even get you.
No, but maybe I'm heartless. But I didn't care about her. I didn't care about Lilith because she's not a good person. I don't know. She's not a good person.
I wasn't sad that Lilith died. I was sad that Mira, Brennan, and Violet lost their mom, who they were forming a new relationship with. Especially because Brennan, when they first meet their mom, or like kind of like she sees Brennan's life, whatever, Brennan is like a bitch to their mom, and like I didn't expect him to be as hateful as he was to their mom, which like he has his reasons, like I'm not judging him, but he has deep malice for her. And so it did tug at my heartstrings a little bit, because she was like, oh my god, like my boy, like she's obviously so emotional and happy to see him alive, and he's like, I hope you fucking die. But then when it came down to it, he's like, no, not my mom.
Well, I think I really like too that you say, or what you said about like their new relationship with her too, because I think the reason why I didn't see it coming in the end is because honestly I still did not trust her, even when she kept doing things for the kids. So like when she let Mira go, I was like, there's got to be a catch here. Or when she gave Violet the information about the wards or whatever, like I was like, there's got to be a catch. Like I don't trust that she's not on, that she's actually taking their side or trying to help them. I was always waiting for the other shoe to drop and just like there to be some sort of reveal that she still was against them, like she was doing that to get their trust to then betray them. So I didn't trust where her loyalties were, so when we find out that like no, those were actually like genuine actions, like that's what it hurt. I have the quote here because we have to pull this one up. Most generals dream of dying in service to their kingdom, but you know me better than that, my love. When I fall, it will be for one reason only, to protect my children.
It's cute.
That hurt.
It's sad. It hurted, man.
It's sad. It's sad. Yeah.
It is sad.
But yeah, it took me. But so in true Abby fashion, I'm somewhere kind of between both, because I teared up at the end too. But I also was not. I wouldn't say that she really grew on me as a character like throughout the book, because I was still not trustful of her. I was still waiting for some sort of betrayal until that final scene, and then I was like, that's when I felt it, because I was like, oh no, she actually meant it. So
yeah, and I also want to call out, like, I was extremely fascinated by how she actually does it, because Sloane is a siphon. She's like brand new manifested her signet, so she doesn't even really know how to use it. And she obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but throughout the whole book, she's basically like kind of hated Violet. She warms up a little bit, but like she has a lot of malice towards the Sorrengails for obvious reasons. And so when Lilith goes to sacrifice herself and she needs Sloane to help her do it, because she can't imbue directly, she starts like saying things to Sloane like, remember, I killed your parents. I made you watch. I did X. I did Y. Yeah. I was the reason that your brother, like, and she starts saying these things to
manipulative.
Yeah. To manipulate Sloane into like being able to do it, or having the emotion behind it to like make her signet do it. And I just thought that was really interesting and complicated, and like, I don't know. Obviously it didn't make me like her, because like she clearly has done many evil things, but I was like, that is just like such a fascinating dynamic that like you are taking ownership of all the shitty things that you've done while you're choosing to sacrifice yourself. You know what I mean? It was like a complicated dynamic.
Yeah. Well, because I think that what it is too is understanding that, like, even as her kids are starting to develop this new relationship with her, like, at the end of the day, like, she is a general who's known for being brutal. She's a general who's known for being very powerful. Like, all these nice things she's doing don't change at the end of the day. Everyone knows her as a hard ass and as a force to be reckoned with. And, like, that's how she's going to die. She's going to go out being what everyone thinks that she is. And but also with the complexity of, like, once you realize that she was risking her life for her daughter, you have a new respect for her. But at the end of the day, like, she still dies being what people think she is, you know? So
yeah, and with very little remorse, because she still believes that what she did was for her children, and I respect that. I don't think everyone needs to have an arc where they do something and then they come to terms with the fact that it was, like, the wrong thing to do, and they kind of have this, like, whole apology arc thing where they're, like, trying to make it up. I think it's fun and interesting to read a redemption arc that's more like, I still don't regret what I did then, because I did it for the same reasons that I'm doing the opposite thing now. I think that's
very realistic. Yeah.
Because most people do not flip from side to side completely unless the motivations match. And for General Sorrengail, they do match. You know, all of her kids now are on the Revolution, and she knows Brennan's alive. Like, Homegirl was like, well, that's it for me. Like, I'm out.
Yeah. Know what I have to do.
Yeah.
Something else that happens near the end is Xaden's second signet reveal. So we knew kind of from Fourth Wing that Sagail was previously bonded to Xaden's grandfather, and that it was, like, a really crazy thing for dragons to do, to bond with someone that was in the direct family line, because it can give them a second signet. So we learned that Xaden's second signet is it's being able to read people's minds and see what their intentions are, which is really interesting. I knew it was going to be mind reading as soon as I found out that there was going to be a second signet, just because I had seen that theory, like, running around TikTok a lot.
I didn't know, and I this scene is one of my favorites, I think, in the book. But this whole buildup of, you know, Violet is basically because we know that a signet is connected to something about you kind of intrinsically and, like, what you need, right? So Violet, who, you know, like, who better to have this scene play out with than the person who, well, I can't even say knows you best, because a big theme in this book is her trying to actually know Xaden, but this person who is close to you and would know at least some of his vulnerabilities and things like that you aren't willing to show to others. So the scene where Violet is going through all these things that he needs, and she's saying it, and she's saying it, and she's saying it,
it's
and
so
it finally
good.
hits. And it's so good, and it hurts so bad.
And when Xaden's like, stop, like, don't go any further. Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
And it says something like, don't go further, or to a point that we
can't come back from.
And
then when it's revealed and he sees the expression on her face, he says, "Less than a minute. That's how long it took for you to fall out of love with me."
Yeah.
And that just that part actually made me tear up now that I'm thinking about it. That part crushed me.
Yeah.
Because you could really feel what he was feeling, what she was feeling. She's feeling betrayed. Like, who wouldn't feel betrayed by this? This is a huge secret that changes everything about their relationship.
Well, and that's why I always, like, well, and I love the Dane parallels too, right? Where not only, like, the more obvious stuff about, like, having the signet that's very powerful and that is kept secret because of the power, how powerful it is, but also, like, the thing that hurts with Dane's betrayal, and I remember we talked about this in the last episode, or in the episode for Fourth Wing, is that you then have to go back and question every interaction that he's ever had with Violet, right? And you have to see if that moment was a genuine moment between the two of them or not, or if it was also a betrayal. And so then you think of that with Xaden, and of course that's exactly where Violet's mind goes to, is how much of our interactions have been something that you have, in a way, had influence over because you were able to read me like this, and so then you can manipulate me.
And And I
And
also
so
want to
it
add,
always hurts the most. Yeah.
Abby, that is an added layer on top of realizing that he made a deal with Violet's mom that he would protect her for her first year.
Yes.
So that's a
Right.
hurdle we've already gotten over, where she's already had this question of like, so the only reason that he was involved with me was because of my mom. And he was like, no, I've left you from the... And then now this. So it's a second layer of like, again, the same thing.
And it's also interesting because he says that he's loved her since the first time they kissed. And then at the same time, she asks him, like, so did you read my mind? Or he brings up that he, like, read her mind before, not read her mind, I keep saying that, but read her intentions before he kissed her and knew that she wanted to kiss him. And so it just, I don't know, it just totally reshapes how you remember that scene.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too, something I'm going to get into a little bit later and get hot takes. I won't spoil that. But like we talk about sometimes there are things hurt worse than like things that hurt, for example, like punishments that hurt worse than death or fates that are worse than death, right? Or in this case, sometimes I think something like this is more painful than like a relationship just ending, right? Because then you have to call into question everything that you think you do know, which is again a theme with her throughout this entire series so far. Is her whole history she has to call into question, her whole family she has to call into question, her whole upbringing, what she thought her future was going to be as a scribe, she has to call into question, right? So now this thing that she values so deeply, it's not only about her future with Xaden and trying to get them to a place where they're no longer holding these secrets, but it's also calling into question everything she thought she knew about him thus far. Not just what she doesn't know yet, because that's a big theme of wanting to know him more, but everything that she thought she at least had a hold on what she did know, and she can't even have that now. And so,
I do have one small potential gripe with this, okay?
Sure.
And it's that... So the way that we actually find out that this is a possibility is through Sloane. She kind of like offhandedly mentions that her dragon bonded with like, it was like her great grandmother or something. And so like she's basically saying like, we're distant enough that we didn't run the risk of me being mad, but also we didn't have the opportunity for me to get a second signet. And this is like the first time that Violet is really, either she's finding it out for the first time, or she's just putting it together that like, oh, Xaden could have this second signet thing. And so I didn't expect him to have a second signet at all. So Xaden betrayed me personally. I thought, oh, he's gonna have like a risk of going mad, and that's gonna be part of the plot, is like, we're not gonna be able to trust Xaden's judgment, blah 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 blah. I was going down that path. I did not expect him to have a second signet. But my question is, if Sloane knows this, and it's not presented as like necessarily a secret, because obviously everyone knows that dragons shouldn't bond within the direct family line, I'm confused about how Xaden has gotten away with it thus far, because also when Violet presents it to him, it's not even like a you could go mad later thing. She presents it like, you either go mad or you get a second signet and you're not mad, so this means you have a second signet, period. Like, both of those things would have happened. So how do we have people, for example, certainly the generals and stuff would know about this thing. I don't understand how Xaden could have gotten away with not at least pretending to have a different signet.
He tries to explain it away, but I remember having the same kind of thought of like, and I hadn't even put together what you just said, Maddie, about like you either go mad or this happens.
Yeah. I hadn't put that together either.
Yeah, I hadn't put that together, but I do remember having a moment, like kind of having to think about it for a second, when he's kind of trying to explain, because he has this explanation about like, basically they were trying to suss him out because they knew that he would, or some of the generals or like professors or something are trying to suss it out because they knew that he should have a second signet. And he just tries to kind of like play it off and like lies it off, I guess. But
and they think it's like his great uncle instead of his grandfather.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Yeah, but I remember reading that and thinking like,
but how would
he got
they
off
not
like
know
a little too easy?
His family line. He had like essentially a royal family line that would have been well documented, and they're dragons at minimum. Like, you're telling me Koda, or however you say General Melgren's dragon's name, is not going to be like, no, I remember who Sigale bonded. That was his straight up grandfather.
Well, and my thing is too, is that we're so used to the Xaden that we know is a Xaden that's not really trusted by professors and everything. But we don't really know early on Xaden, right? And so like, or before Violet. And so my thing is too is like, in my head, my first thing was like, how are they not suspicious of him? Like for having, but the other thing is too, on the flip side of that, it's not only a negative thing, like it's a good thing too, right? Of like, if I know that one of my writers who's from this incredibly powerful bloodline could have a second signet, and he's at my in my war college, I am trying to train that second signet. Like I want him to be even more powerful if he is,
because they're already using him as a weapon, as like their strongest weapon until Violet comes along.
Yeah. So no, I didn't think there was enough explanation on that.
And then I did roll my eyes a little bit when it was like, of course he has like mind reading. Of course that would be the second signet. It couldn't just be something like fucking normal. Of course,
I did think
it
was
be
funny when I think Kaylee that you're like, I knew that it was gonna be mind reading, because for me, I did not catch on fast enough. So she's like listing off all these things, and I'm like, what else is he really? And then as soon as she put the connection together, I was like, oh, okay. I thought it was going to be like this like random thing.
Apparently in the first book, this is something that I heard on TikTok. Apparently in the first book, the reason we know it's mind reading is because she says things in her mind out loud. Like she says them, how do I say this? Like
to herself.
She says things in her mind and he responds to them, and then she'll say, oh, I didn't know I said that out loud. Oh. And so that's how people figured out that he could read minds.
But is it not through the... So, okay.
Yeah, I always thought it was the bond.
It's the bond, but the bond has to be intentional. Is that what it is? So she has to like consciously like want to be talking to him versus something that she's thinking to herself that he catches on to. Okay.
Right. She's just thinking to herself.
But then my question is like, because they kind of, he's like, I'm an intrinsic, but I can only read intentions. But he draws so much from the intentions that I'm like, I don't fully understand how much information he's getting, because it's almost like, I was like, oh, of course he's an intrinsic, roll my eyes. And then he's like, well, I can only read intentions. And I'm like, okay, that's a little better. That makes sense for his character, whatever. But then it's like, he can garner so much information that I'm like, I don't understand the difference. Like, I don't.
I'm looking forward to, I'm sure that we'll figure out, and I'm sure that is, it's fascinating because I haven't thought about yet too, how this is going to impact, his new look, if you will. Much to think about. Much to think about.
And speaking of second signets, we also have Violet, who's going to get a second signet because, and I think it's going to be quirky because another big reveal is that Andarna is a 7th species of dragon, a whole separate thing. When she first kind of like appears in the book, she's like, I'm a black dragon, it's chill. And Violet, they did have this moment where Violet was like, really, a black dragon? Which again, I was like, okay, true, because that was me. I was like, really, a black dragon? And Taryn is just like, it is what it is, whatever. But then at the end of the novel, it's revealed, and there's several like little bits that you realize something's weird with Andarna, but at the end of the novel, it's revealed she can basically like change her coloring at will and camouflage and like basically go invisible. So there's a lot to unpack there.
So one thing I didn't like, I can't even say it. Like, I won't say it's a strong enough feeling that I didn't like it, but I was kind of like iffy on was the whole dreamless sleep. Like, the first
like half
of it. Yeah, I was like, this seems like a really convenient way to have Andarna not have to get mixed up in all this, and then to then reveal her as this like incredibly powerful dragon. Like, I was kind of like, meh. But now that if she were just like any other, if she weren't like a whole separate species, if it wasn't this whole really dramatic reveal, then I think the whole thing about like, oh, she's in a dreamless sleep kind of longer than everyone else is. Like, I would have kind of hated that if it was just like, oh, she was just tired,
she just eepy.
Yeah, she just eepy. She's an eepy baby, which like cute. But I'm really excited to see how this pans out in the next book. That's for damn sure.
Yeah. I don't know. To me, there are just like so many special things going on about the Violet, Xaden, Terran, Sigale, and
Yes.
Darna Fivesome. There's so many special things about them at this point. One, it's hard to keep track. Two, they're basically invincible, so it lowers the stakes. And also, like, it was convenient. Like, of course, it's Violet's dragon. That's the seventh special species of
Exactly.
dragon, and she's the one trying to figure out how to raise the wards at the same time. Of
Yup.
course, it's her dragon. And so
Yup.
it was just like kind of another thing thrown in there to me, and I did not like it.
Well,
And
oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Maddie.
I was just gonna say, like, this is exactly what I was talking about last time, which we'll kind of get into more later too. But like, there's just so much that it's like they don't need to be that powerful. It's so complicated, and I really just wanted Andarna to be like an orange Daggertail. You know, like I just wanted her to be a normal ass dragon that was like fun. And there's like cute, like it's really cute that Andarna is like, I waited 650 years, and when I heard there was a scribe, you know, that was gonna join the Briar Scroll, whatever, I chose you like before I even met you. Like, don't get me wrong, it's really cute, but she's so quirked up, man.
She is.
And Zayden's quirked up, and especially now, like, I don't know.
Well, and I was gonna say, that was what you just brought up was exactly what I was thinking about, of like, I felt the same way, where Andarna gives her like little, like the big, you know, this reveal at the end with her, and she says like all this really sweet stuff,
Really
and
cute.
but I guess, yeah, I'm just, it's a little too convenient. All of it, it's just too convenient.
It is.
Yeah,
it's too much.
She's adorable. I'm excited to see what this means for Violet and for her, but also a lot of convenient things all at once.
Yeah.
Except
something very inconvenient.
Something pretty inconvenient, and something that could probably change the entire course of the rest of this series. And what is probably the craziest like last two chapters of a book, which if you've been listening to our other episodes, we've just did stuff on Serpent and the Wings of the Night, which those books have some really wild endings, particularly the first one. So we're back to that again of really crazy endings, which I do love. So anyway, we have Xaden, who in the final battle, things become extremely bleak, and he's basically having like one-on-one fighting the sage, Venin, the big Venin, not the big bad, but the one step down,
a little big bad,
non-big bad. While Violet tries to fix the Wardstone, and so he's losing the fight by quite a lot, and simultaneously Violet is of course actively sacrificing her life in that moment to fix the whole Wardstone. And so he senses this, and in a moment of desperation, he pulls energy from the land to overcome the sage and win the fight. But by doing this, he himself becomes a Venin with a massive addiction to power. And my jaw dropped. I was telling Maddie and Kaylee this earlier, but I was in the car listening to this audiobook, and I'm pretty sure the person next to me just saw me just catching flies. My jaw literally dropped. It's like the whole thing with Cadet Sorengale happened. I'm like, oh, so sad. The Andarna reveal, I'm like, oh wow, wild. And then this, my jaw dropped.
Yeah. Can I say I loved the way this was written, because the words go up and you're like, okay, we're fine. And Violet had like connected with Xaden's bond, whatever the fuck, and it was like she could tell he was also like about to die, whatever, so things are going really, really bad. And then so the words go up and you get this like moment of like, okay. And then she is like, Terran, what's going on? And Terran's like, he's alive. But there's something in the quiet that that's not right. And she goes up to them, and they're kind of like blocking her view of him, and she's like, are we chill? And they're like, you can go. And Sigale kind of moves aside, and he's like facing away from her, and she's like, be careful of what you say. And it was just so good, because like you fucking know something has gone terribly wrong. And the buildup of it, the quiet stillness that like is alarming after like the end of a battle, it was just like amplified in like a really good way.
It was.
And I totally spoiled this for myself because I kept seeing TikToks about it. And so I had to Google what happened at the end. I was like sitting at a restaurant and I Googled it, and then I was just crushed. Like I was like, this cannot be the end of the book.
Well,
yeah.
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
It was crushing, and yeah, it killed me.
Well, and when you texted us that you had Googled it too, I was like, so I just, fun fact, I finished the book like 45 minutes before we recorded. Because I've been reading a lot. I'm just not, your girl's not a fast reader. But anyway, so like when you texted that, I was like, oh shit, I really got it. I need to finish this like now. I need to know. Well, so we did really like the way that scene was written, even though it's like crushing, like extremely painful.
It was great.
But then I think something that we had kind of talked about was like one thing I did not like was to then get Xaden's perspective. Like we don't need
hated it.
We just could have cut.
It was horrible.
It was bad.
For any Twilight fans, we could have Breaking Dawn that shit where it's just like, you know, you get that scene at the end of Breaking Dawn Part 1 where Bella's eyes open and it's just red. You just see red. I want that at the end of this book. I don't want to hear his perspective. I don't want any of that whole scene with Jack. I just want cut scene.
In fact, it's honestly low-key ironic because in a wonderful scene in the book, we get Xaden's perspective through him feeding it through to Violet through their bond. Okay. And we get his view on things, and it's great. It's a lovely moment, okay? And I was really here for it, and I was thinking to myself, I want to talk about how glad I am that they did it that way instead of making us read a chapter that's like dual POV from Xaden's perspective.
True.
And now I can't give that praise because I had to suffer through that. First of all, I was extremely confused because, like, you know, I'm alarmed after the last chapter. So, like, I'm skimming, okay? And I didn't see this stupid little heading that's, like, Xaden. And so I read the first, like, 3 pages, and I was like, what the fuck is Violet talking about? Like, what is going on? And then I had to reread it, like, 3 times before I realized, like, oh, this is, gross. I hated that.
Yeah.
And then Jack saying, guess we're brothers now.
Hate.
Ick. But one thing I do want to talk about is how when you become a venom, when your dragon dies, it doesn't kill you too, which is something we saw with Jack. And I felt like that setup was so good because it leads us to kind of thinking and putting things together and thinking like, oh, so that means if Xaden dies, Violet is not going to die too. And neither is Taryn and neither is Sigale.
Yeah.
And so I just feel like that setup was so, so, so good.
You're so right.
Yeah.
I really had not, before you said it, I really had not thought about that. Like that is so intentional. You know? So that is really smart. Yep.
And I also want to draw a quick comparison again about the writing and the parallelism that I really enjoyed here, because when Violet is imbuing the Ward Stone, she has a moment where she kind of feels the power from the land, and she literally says, like, it would be so easy to pull the power through the land and imbue the stone, and I would live and it would be fine and it would work. And she chooses instead to sacrifice herself and not do the thing, versus Xaden, who felt basically the same exact thing in the same exact moment of desperation, and he chose to do it. And I really liked that parallelism of how they make choices and where their priorities are, because the truth is Xaden, he would do the evil thing. He would do the evil thing if it matched his motivations, and I think he's really similar to Violet's mom in that way. They are very similar in how they make choices, and Xaden warns us about this through the whole book. So I just thought it really was cool.
And it's all in the name of, like, well, this is going to be so cheesy, in the name of love. But heart hands. But yeah, I think that it's easy to maybe group Violet and Xaden together as having similar motivations, and they are similar, but prioritization is different, right? Where, like, he does care about protecting his people, but at the end where he kind of says to to Violet, like, if you wanted to fly out and like leave this whole thing,
Yeah.
this before this whole scene happens where he becomes Venom, like
it's like 5 minutes before battle.
Yeah, like, haha, unless, like, what if we left? That's something that Violet wouldn't do, because
Never.
Violet, her priorities are still protecting, I think, protecting the people over her connection to him, I guess. Is so yeah, I agree. That's an interesting way to see their priorities. So
I want to share my next book prediction with you guys, okay? Because I feel like it's going to be true.
Okay.
But I feel like Violet's going to spend the whole book searching for a cure for Xaden, and then she'll find out, like, her dad or Xaden's mom, one of them has something to do with this cure. And then Xaden will be cured, but it will require making some sort of big sacrifice. And then, yeah, I'm not sure what's going to happen in the 2 books after that, but that's my prediction for the next book. I think the whole thing will be her searching for a cure for him.
I think that's true. I don't know if it'll be, if Xaden gets cured next book, I almost think that's a waste of the twist. I think it should be later on in the series. Since this is going to be 5 whole books, my God.
True.
Drag it out.
I have a very technical question. Okay, so can non-venom, I guess. Am I tripping to think that you can't, like, touch them? Or doesn't something happen if they touch you? Or is that just in one thing?
You're right.
They can suck the power out of you.
They have to choose to
choose to do that?
Yeah.
Choose to suck.
Yeah. Which every venom has thus far, right? So
you can choose to suck.
Right.
Yeah.
So
oh, okay. So then when we get back to the, once again, a Dane parallel, Dane says, a big question comes up in this book, because Violet asks Dane, you'll see where the connection is. She asks him, like, did every time you, like, touch me, were you reading my thoughts or whatever? And or looking at my memories, and he says no. Do you remember? Like, yeah. So I think that intentionality has to be part of it as well, right? So that can also be abused, right? Like, this person that you trust, even if it's not happening automatically, they could turn on you in an instant, right? So I am interested to see, because I won't say this is my prediction, but, like, my, like, wild, absolutely ridiculous theory too could be that, like, not that I don't want this to happen, but, like, what if Xaden what if she is basically her and Dane have to, like, then team up because Xaden can't be trusted, and then we have a Dane and Violet arc. I already said
no. I reject this, but I do think, Abby, along the same lines, because here's how I can see Xaden handling this. Okay, realistically, because he's not flat out evil. He doesn't want to use the venom power. We know, because he goes and he asks for, like, a cure or whatever, blah, 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 which is where we get the weird Jack scene, whatever. So his intention is to not be venom and to not, like, join their whatever the fuck they're doing. But I can see him, because we're told he's dealing with this, like, craving to do more, and that's the whole point, is, like, you kind of get consumed by this addiction. I can see him playing with it, especially to, like, impress Violet, or, if Violet needs a little extra power, I don't know if there's, like, a siphoning ability or, like, a transfer, but I could see him doing it for her, and then the addiction getting worse and worse and worse and worse the more he plays with it and engages with it.
That would make him interesting.
So I think he's going to feel confident that he can keep it under control, and do it in, like, very micro doses when it's needed or helpful or whatever, in very justifiable situations, but it's going to end up eating him up at some point, and he's going to lose control, and Violet is going to have to do something, because the sage tells Violet that she will be the one to bring down the wards when the time comes. And I think she's going to have to make that choice to save Xaden at some point.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that for sure.
Yeah, that's the only reason I can see why she would want to do that. And I'm sure it may be different, but that's where my head is at right now.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
All right. So now we're gonna get a little spicy, and we're gonna revisit our Fourth Wing pour-overs and hot takes. So I'll go first. My hot take was that Rhiannon was not a full character. She was boring. We didn't care about Rhiannon, and I still don't care about Rhiannon. I hate Rhiannon, actually. I think she sucks. Like, she's so nosy. Like, I don't sit there and ask my friends these questions over and over until they eventually like reveal things to me. Like, I let them come to me when they want to talk about things. And she does not do that. She just can't mind her own damn business, and I hated it.
So she's a nosy bitch.
I will say, if I was Rhiannon, I do think I would be nosy, because I am nosy currently in my current state, and things are not at risk. And so definitely, I know Violet's like into some shit, and I would be like, can you please just fucking tell me? Like, I want to know. However, Rhiannon as a character is so boring, and I don't care about her at all. Riddick and Sawyer, I love so much more than Rhiannon.
Mm-hmm.
And so
I wish we got more of them.
She was so
and
overshadowed.
Imogen, I loved Imogen.
Yeah,
like I want
like
more
Imogen.
of Imogen.
Yeah. No, I did like Imogen a lot. And so my take on Rhiannon is that because I think that I was more like pro Rhiannon the first book, and
you had a lot of faith.
Yeah, I had a lot of faith. And yeah, she serves an important role in that, but again, I think this is kind of echoing what you had said, Kaylee, of like, I think that you had made this point of like, really what she kind of does is she just reveals things about Violet, right? Like she serves as a way to bring certain things out of Violet, right? Mm-hmm. And so like for this, I think she just serves as this like indication of like all of Violet's kind of trust issues and her inability to confide in people, and this kind of internal battle that she's going with, right? Of like having to hold all these secrets, but still wanting friendship, still wanting comfort, still, needing that. But I don't really think she brings a whole lot of individuality to the story, like, no, as a character.
And she doesn't even do anything useful necessarily. Like, there's nothing that's like, only Rhiannon can help with this. I guess when she pulls the knife, dagger, whatever from Violet's back when she's being stripped down by Varish, I guess. I don't know. I still don't really care. I was like, cool.
My pour over was like, what did dragons get from bonding with a rider during threshing? Like, what did they get from it? And I'm pretty sure that was explained in the book. I think it was just like loosely glossed over. So I can't really recall what that was, but it was explained. So happy that she addressed that.
I believe the pitch was that like, I'm a writer. The writers protect their hatching grounds from the venom because they're more powerful when they can use the writers' signets. I believe that was the idea.
Okay.
And they need I guess I don't know if they need both to power the ward stone, because technically, maybe writers have to build the ward stone, because it only took dragons to power it, so maybe they don't need writers for that. I don't know. I thought that was where that was gonna go, but never mind. I don't know. I don't fully know if it's still believable, honestly.
Yeah,
they did try to explain it though.
Yeah, we get a little bit more.
Yeah,
but yeah.
Okay, well, we can go through mine next. So my pour over was that Brennan and Nowlin were in love, and that Nowlin died resurrecting Brennan, and maybe that's what moves Brennan over to the revolution. And we do get slightly more Nowlin lore.
A little bit.
Just a little tease. But I still believe in this. Because like, Brennan is so weird about how he talks about Nowlin, and I was low-key upset at Violet for not asking more questions, because hello, girl, I need this information.
She's not nosy like Rhiannon.
Right. I'm like, again, you know what? Maybe Xaden was right. Maybe she does need to learn how to ask the right questions. Because
the right question is, girl, what was going on between you and Nowlin?
Right. And so,
she does say the thing about, like, she suspects that they might have been more than, I don't remember what she says, like,
does she?
Violet, Violet talks about, when Brennan briefly talks about Nowlin, she says that she suspected they might have been more than, like, writers or something. So the way it's phrased is really interesting because she doesn't say more than friends.
Yeah.
She says, so
yeah, I remember that.
Maybe they could just be, maybe she means that they were friends. Yeah. But I think
I didn't feel like she clocked it.
She also says the thing about asking him if he, like, is with anyone, and he says, no, I don't have a partner or something. He uses the language partner specifically, which, again, just putting pieces together, I'm like,
Yeah. And also, we get a little tidbit from Taryn because Violet asks him a question about Nowlin, and he's like, we do not talk about the one who came before. Like, all vague. And so I felt like the way that they were talking about Nowlin was very intentional, that there was, like, more going on there.
There's more to the story.
Yeah.
Which, quick sidebar on Nowlin, or Naolin, or however you say it. Yeah. I think that my theory is that he didn't die and he's actually a Venin, because they're really vague. They never say he dies. They're just like, he gave up everything or something like that. So I actually think he could be like one of the big bad, like, sage Venins. Like, yeah, that's what I think.
Wait, but I think you're right, though. Ooh.
Wait, then I just thought of something, though. That then how would Taryn and Taryn be able to choose?
I think Violet. The dragons can choose to break the bond.
That's interesting.
Segale hasn't chosen to break the bond yet, but I think they have the ability to.
Yeah.
If he is alive and that bond was broken, then it would have to be a pretty big offense for him.
And it would have to be justifiable to, like, the Empyrean Council or whatever.
Yeah.
That kind of backs your theory that that's a possibility, I feel like. Because for that to be a possibility, it had to be pretty bad. So. Yeah. Which, being a villain, would be bad.
Very interesting. I hope we get more next book. That's where my faith is at. And then my hot take was that Violet basically is, like, way too overpowered. She's quirked up, and she has, like, she's gonna have 2 dragons, 2 signets, whatever. I still think that's pretty true in this book, and maybe even more true because of what I'll share for, like, my pour over for this actual book. But I do think they at least do a good job of, like, they're so outmatched by the Wyvern and the Venin that it feels like they do need all the advantages they can get, because they still, even with all the overpoweredness they have, they still essentially are losing, like, 90% of the time. So it's not as egregious, but it's a little much for me still.
Yeah, I agree.
The coincidences are still a little
coincidenting.
They're
coincidenting. They're coincidenting. Yeah. But I think a lot of her internal conflict and stuff too, and, like, her insecurities and things like that, and the discussion of that kind of balances out. There's a more, like, humane side to her, I think, too, to kind of explore a bit too.
Yeah.
So. Cool. Well, my pour over for the last book was wondering why Violet's signet power was wielding lightning, and how we thought that might tie into the fact that her mother's signet is wielding storms. And I had a prediction, I think, that there was going to be some huge battle where they were using both of those, which her mom does use the storms a little bit, but it wasn't quite what I thought. I thought that her and her mom were going to go against each other with these powers sometime later in the series, and of course that's not quite what happens. But I think some of that gets answered in this book in ways, in terms of the signet. Of course, Violet explores her signet a lot more, and is taught how to control it and kind of use it in ways that aren't just as literal as, like, making a big strike of lightning over a mountain, so I think that that's answered a bit, but not.
And I agreed with you pretty hard on this one, Abby. I thought it was just like a little ridiculous that her mother's was storms and hers was lightning. And they're all like, lightning is one of the most strong blah, blah, blah. It was much. But I will say that when she is kind of like, when she's trying to figure out Zayden's second signet and she's talking through just like verbalizing how it actually happens, because they say constantly like it depends on the writer, blah 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 blah, but just hearing it verbalized the way that she does with Xaden, it made me understand like she is so weak that she needed an extremely strong signet to balance it out. And so that made it more digestible for me. And also when she's getting tutoring from Felix, maybe is his name, and he's like, and he tells her power isn't actually lightning. It's just like raw energy, but she chooses basically to manifest it as lightning. And so I thought that was really interesting because, again, it kind of makes sense because she's like seen the storm stuff with her mom, so it kind of makes sense that like that would be like her go-to state. But also I'm very curious about like, what else can she manifest it as? Like, and she didn't even explore that. Again, ask the right questions, girl. Like, hello, what else can I do? Can I make flame?
Well, and I think too a big theme of this book is that, of course, as she's kind of questioning everything that she knows, part of that is kind of questioning Basgiath's leadership and what they want them to know, what they don't want them to know. And so I think when she's getting trained, Felix or whoever makes a big point of saying like, you know, there's been so much emphasis on you just being powerful, like, you know, throwing like an axe instead of being able to do these little subtleties that are actually more useful a lot of times and more complex, right? Because of course it's showy and cool that she can wield lightning and, you know, in these big battles that'll be powerful. But for her growth, he wants her to be more strategic. So, we got some interesting information from this book for sure. Yeah. And then my hot take, which we also get more information on, was that the whole mind reading signet was being a death sentence felt very weird to me. Because I felt like there would be some way just to train mind readers to be weapons without being threats. But, you know, 2 points on that. Of course, everyone at Basgiath knows that their leadership knows that they're holding in secrets. So having students be able to understand their secrets or their motivations or whatever the case may be exposes Basgiath leadership for everything that they know and that they're holding from their students. So we learned that more a lot through this book too, but then also, of course, with, you know, variations of the signet, like what Xaden has, where he can figure out like motivations. Of course, battle, that is, if your students turn against you, that quickly becomes a big problem. So, which if you don't have reason for that to happen, you know, but anyway,
I thought it was interesting. I liked the idea that there were different flavors of intrinsic, but just that like they don't know because they never let them live or like grow their power or anything. Right. I did think like, I don't know, Zayden's like, yeah, my second signet manifested like a month after my first, but I just like kept it chill because I already had seen someone like get killed for it, and I was like, okay, like ridiculous, but also like so Xaden coded that he's so fucking measured and controlled at all times that like regular people would freak out if they could suddenly read minds, but me, I just said what a weird Tuesday and like adapted. And so I just thought that was funny that it was like, okay, like, but it was more information on like what it's kind of like to be a mind reader, I guess, and some of them are probably much more overwhelming than others. Especially if there's like intentionality like we were talking about, because the one guy that gets killed with Violet, it seemed like it didn't require intention. It maybe would require intention to not read minds, because my homeboy was suppressed. And so it's interesting that like the flavor of intrinsic, and like there might be more people that are intrinsics that we don't know yet. I don't know.
T.
Okay, so are we ready to move over to our current pour overs and hot takes?
Yeah.
The true spice begins here. Yes. Okay, so for my current pour over, this is what I'm most excited about. Okay, so we know Violet is going to get a second signet from Andarna. And I think Andarna and Violet's signet has already manifested, and we just didn't realize it at the time because it's different than any signet we've heard of before. And I think that's because Andarna is a completely different type of dragon than we've had in, like, what'd she say, like 650 years or something? So I think this signet will be really, really quirked up and weird. And in my opinion, because I need this to live, I think that when she was being tortured by Varish and Liam comes as like a little spirit, and you kind of think Violet is hallucinating, but she's also like, she makes a few comments where she's like, he's oddly real, or like, I can kind of feel like him actually touch me, or whatever. I think that's Andarna's signet, is that Violet can somehow commune with people who have passed, or spirits or something, and she may even be able to kind of like do something where she can use her signet to make them more physical for a time. And I think it could be a cool way to bring Liam back into the fold without doing like a really cheesy resurrection thing. I think it should be extremely taxing and cost much. But I think it's something to do with that, in my opinion, because that whole scene, Liam is just like very there, and he's like very real, and I'm like,
that's like the resurrection stone, like in Harry Potter, for weird jump, but at the end of the series where he gets to have like this really like fleeting moment with those who have passed, including his parents. So like if Violet could have this moment with her dad and like really
the information that she could get.
Like have this moment, as long as, like you said, it's not overused, it's very taxing, it's not something that happens often at all, if even more than once or twice. But that is fascinating.
I like that. Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah,
I just want more Liam. That's my coping mechanism, is myself, this is the signet. Anywho, so for my hot take, I am of the opinion that Mira, Rhiannon, Sawyer, and probably more people should have died.
She's calling out names.
Hey,
that's a hot take.
They're on my hit list, okay? Because Rhiannon was boring. I think she either should have been the little big bad that Jack was, or she should be slain.
I wish she were the little big bad. But
Mira should be slain because that's an easy dub for the emotions for the book, okay? Big sis getting slain. Sure. Now we just have Brennan. I think that would be a W. Sawyer, baby boy lost his leg. Baby boy should have lost his life. And I love Sawyer, but we need some emotional punches. The fact that none of the four in the squad, Rhiannon, Sawyer, Riddick, Violet, none of them died in that final battle where they were so outmatched is kind of whack. And I also feel like throughout the book, we have so many moments where they get in like a big battle and they get hurt severely and they're simply mended and they're fine by the next morning. And it just takes away some of the seriousness. I want to be reminded of the stakes. Otherwise I don't care.
Well, and again, this is war. Like, you should. I think there was something in the book where they were talking about like being surprised at the number of names like on the death toll. This is something that when they're in Arisha, whatever it is, and I was like, really? Because even if you have well-trained cadets or whatever, I feel like that's probably expected. So or like you said, at least if not death, then some sort of more strong betrayal, like of Rhiannon being in Jack's place instead of just randomly bringing him up, even though we don't really care about him anymore. Interesting.
Agreed. All right, my pour over. I'm still pouring over Xaden's second signet and what that means for book 1, because this means he would have known what professors and generals knew about Wyvern and Venom. And wouldn't it also mean that he would have known that General Atos like had the intention of sending them off to the actual battle instead of war games during Fourth Wing? And wouldn't it mean that and wouldn't it mean that, like, he would know if Dane ever really had the intention of turning on Violet or not? Like, wouldn't he have known these things? Like, I'm still pouring over that.
Yeah, I'm interested in the extent, like, again, the technicalities. Like, does he have to be having what kind of proximity does he have to be in with this person to then understand their intentions? Like, does he have to be having a conversation with Colonel or whatever, Atos.
Daddy
Uh-huh.
Atos is his
Yeah,
preferred
yeah,
title.
yeah. Daddy Atos. But yeah.
That's a great point, Kaylee. I didn't think about the Atos thing, but that's great. Because even in Fourth Wing, he says something where it's like, "Oh, we're being sent to our deaths," and he picked out all of his like marked most loyal people, and he's like, "That was a dumb fucking move. Like, why did I do that?"
Mm-hmm.
So it makes it even more dumb. Like, why did you not check? Like, you think they would give you the power to choose, and they would let you take 17,000
Right.
mark ones, and like you didn't think it was sus to check now that you have this mind reading power? Like, hello?
Yeah. And does he
Right.
does he turn it off? Does he turn it on? Like, we don't I just want more information on that.
Yeah.
And then my hot take. Are you ready? Okay. My hot take is that this series should have been a trilogy where either Violet or Xaden dies. Like, I want Violet to somehow sacrifice herself to save Xaden in the next book. I mean, because it's 5 books, like, we know Xaden isn't gonna die. We know Violet isn't gonna die. Like, I get people being wrecked by this ending because I was too, but we know that they're in game, they're gonna live. Like,
Yeah.
it's kind of lame that we know that, you know? Like, when you really think about it, I don't know. I just wish one of them would die.
I just wish one of them would get out of my face.
I love them, but I don't know. I just
no, like
yeah,
it's a hot take. I think some people are gonna be like, "What the fuck?" But yeah,
yeah. I don't want Xaden or Violet to die. I don't like pain as much as that would cause me. But I do agree that there is a certain amount of like stakes that are removed when it's like Xaden gets like a death blow, and you know, in like your reader brain, like he's gonna be okay, he's gonna pull through. And like when Violet was sacrificing herself for the stone, I know in my reader brain, like she's something's gonna happen, she's gonna be okay because she's like the main character. So yeah, I agree. Yeah, it would make a big statement.
Well, it's also like I'm intrigued to see how we get. What are we supposed to have? How many books after this? Like 3 more?
3 more. Yeah. Too many.
Ooh. She shouldn't have revealed that there were going to be 5 books. She should have just
that's facts. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Like that should have been kept to herself because yeah, I don't know. I have a lot of questions as to how this would span.
Yeah.
5 books. Okay, so I'm gonna quickly go my pour over because I have something important to say. So my pour over is just that I'm gonna echo what we've already discussed about thinking about Xaden's second signet, everything that's meant for the past 2 books, and I think that's mostly kind of tying into what you're saying, Kaylee, too. Like, I am mostly interested, not even thinking of how this is going to affect the future, but what it has meant for the past, yeah, how much can we trust him? I mean, it's much like we talked about revisiting all the scenes where Dane touches Violet. And of course, in this book, we find out that he wasn't reading her mind in every moment because she basically asked him, and so I am curious to see how much of his second signet has influenced to where we've gotten to be, right? But my hot take. Okay. So if this is going to be a 5-book series, we cannot continue with just status quo, right? And clearly we can't, because Miss Rebecca Yarros throws us for a massive loop at the end, right? And after thinking about it a little bit more, I'm thinking that maybe Xaden should become a villain.
Okay.
I'm thinking that, look, I love him more than anyone else, okay? And I do love a bad guy. We've talked about this before. This doesn't mean I can't love him. Maybe I'll love him more. Who's to say? Okay, I'm not going to be moral.
Abby's spiraling.
But okay, so here we are. All right, if he becomes a villain, I said if he becomes a villain. We know he becomes a villain. If he becomes a villain, so I think this will make for a much more interesting story arc for the rest of the series. And that a parallel that I've been thinking of, if we have any Star Wars fans, if not, let me briefly explain. We all, even if you're not a Star Wars fan, you're probably familiar with Darth Vader, big bad evil. I'm not your father, all that good stuff.
Really? Spoiler.
Yeah.
God,
Yeah.
please.
Star Wars. He is Luke's father. I'm so sorry. Not you. You heard it here first, Internet Explorer. I'm here to tell you that Darth Vader is Luke's father. I'm so sorry. He's also Leia's dad.
But that means...
yeah, that means... so anyway, if you're familiar at all with Star Wars, Anakin, who is, of course, Darth Vader, basically starts as like wanting to become this Jedi for his own sake. He wants to become powerful. He wants to be revered. He wants to do good with power. And then he loses sight of that because he starts wanting to protect his wife, Padme Amidala, instead. And so he does a lot of things in the name of protecting her, which then leads to him becoming obsessed with power, and then he ends up turning on her and becoming evil, right? So I think that there's a really interesting case we made here for Xaden. Like we've said, we know that he does not prioritize things the same way that Violet does, right? Like he prioritizes protecting Violet. He's made that clear a couple times that he will do things to protect Violet, even if it means risking other people's safety and well-being. And even if he just kind of hints at it. So I think there's a really interesting case to be made here where he starts to maybe work for the Venin on the inside or something in the name of protecting Violet. Maybe he offers to do certain things for them in order to protect her as a trade, right? Like if they protect her,
because he's done that before with Violet's mom.
Right. If they don't hurt her, then he'll do this. He'll make a deal with them to protect her. But then because Venin are power hungry, he himself becomes power hungry, all in the name of protecting Violet, and in doing so becomes the very thing that he wants to protect her against.
Because maybe he's like, I'm gonna take out the King Venin so that I can be the King Venin, so I can protect Violet.
Yeah, because Anakin's whole thing is like, if he is so powerful, then nothing can hurt Padme, right?
Right.
If he is the most powerful, then nothing can hurt Padme. If Xaden is the most powerful, then what can possibly hurt Violet?
Okay, why am I kind of into it?
True, I like this.
Rebecca.
You're a woman.
And look, everyone who's ever watched Star Wars knows, or even if you just seen the pictures, we all know how fine Anakin is, right?
Yes.
Including evil Anakin.
Yeah.
Okay, look, we can still love him.
Yeah.
He's still fine. All right.
So
the only thing that then opens the door though for like a Dane and Violet thing, which, like I said, I will never stand. So
you lost me there.
I'm out. For this reason, I'm out.
For this reason, I'm out. So if we have 3 more books, there has to be some sort of tension here beyond just I don't think I trust him. It's because he's evil. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And your version could even work for Kaylee's wish, like if he turns full evil and then Violet has to kill him.
You know what I'm fucking thinking is that I need to start writing this fanfic now. I'm gonna put.
We will finish the next 3 books, guys. Please subscribe, follow the pod. We'll let you know.
I will revive AO3 from middle school, and we'll make this happen. It won't be good. Honestly, I'll probably recruit you, Maddie. Maddie's a good writer, so I'm gonna recruit Maddie to write this for me.
No problem.
Yeah. So check in. We'll have the next book for you.
Yeah. No worries.
Anyways. Yeah. So that's my hot take. Anyway,
I like it.
Okay.
I like it.
Cool.
Cool. So we have our final part of the pod. We're gonna do ratings and talk about our favorite parts of the book. So for me, this is a rare 5 of 5 for the rating for the book. Yes, nice. I loved it. I ate it up. I thought the pacing was really interesting. I thought she did a good job, even at school, of kind of like giving us things to look forward to and including these little moments of conflict, like with Violet and Varish or whatever, so that we stayed engaged even when we weren't like on the front lines of the war. I love character and relationship stuff. Everything made sense. The stakes were high. It was a book where it was like I closed it and I was ready to like go back, start from page 1. And so that's a 5 of 5 for me. There are things I would have changed, but if I'm ready to read it again immediately, that's a 5 of 5. For me, my favorite part, as wild as it sounds, was the chapter where Violet is being held captive and tortured by Varish. It just was like so emotional and like well written, and every time Liam had like a line of dialogue, I teared up. I was like, that's my boy, okay? And like Violet, the fact that she, in that time of need, she manifested Liam and not Xaden, for example, I was touched. And also I think it's the signet. But I think it was meaningful, and I just was very touched and I'm moved by her going through that, man. She was going through it. And I think there was something like Violet's hurt all the time. And I'm just like, whatever. But like the way that stuff was written, I was like, damn, she is going through it.
Yeah.
So very good. That's my faves.
Sweet.
My rating was a 4.4 out of 5. I took off 0.6 just because I got really bored at some parts of the book, especially the middle. But I loved it overall, and I loved the character development. 5 stars to me just means I would read it again, and I probably wouldn't read it again unless I did some major skimming. So that's me. Mm-hmm. And then my favorite part was when we learned about Xaden's second signet. I already talked about that earlier. I love that part.
Yeah, absolutely. So also in a shocking turn of events, this was also a 5 out of 5 for me. And I was prepared to be a hater.
Same.
Very, very prepared to be a hater for this book. And I was shocked. I mean, I thought the pacing was great. I do agree that there were some slow parts. I think just because I loved everything else so much, I still think it'll keep that 5 out of 5 for me for a bit. But and really what I loved more than all that was character development, believable character development for where we were at in the story. Again, something I think of like the Harry Potter series that does really well is that from year 1 to year 2 to year 3, you see these very natural and understandable progressions in each of the characters as they're not only growing in age, but also in what they're experiencing. And I thought that the character development here was very well paced and made sense. Despite all the wild, crazy stuff going on too. And then my favorite part, I honestly haven't thought about what my favorite part is yet because I'm still marinating on it because, like I said, finished it pretty soon before recording this. But one random thing that I really liked was the scene where they stole the journals. This is not, I don't know if it's my favorite scene, but it's just a scene I wanted to give a shout out to. It's like a mini heist, a little fancy heist scene. So I thought that was a fun scene that we didn't really mention.
And we didn't even talk about Eric. It doesn't matter. I wanted Eric to be more utilized, but he was so relevant to the mini heist.
Oh, shoot.
Eric is the third son of the king of the fucking Navarre.
Oh, is that how you pronounce it? I thought it was Arik.
Oh, I don't know.
Well, I
just
know
assumed
who
it was Eric, and she was just probably freaky.
I bet he's going to be a massive part in the next book, so we didn't even touch on
that. Well, I wanted him to be a part of this book, and I kind of wanted him to be just a little challenge of a love interest for Xaden, just to keep Xaden on his toes.
I thought that too, because she said he was like beautiful or whatever.
She was like his green eyes, and I was like, I'm done. I'm in.
Wow. Okay. Well, at the very end, it's a great time for us to mention that. We'll see how that goes.
I totally forgot about him because he was not enough in the book. It's fine. Anyways, yes, the heist scene, cute. Yep. Okay. Yep.
All right.
Cool. If everyone has said their piece, that's all the tea we have on Iron Flame, and so much more. Thank you so much for listening with us for this super mega episode. We could talk about this for a million more hours, clearly. Next week, we'll be taking a week off for Thanksgiving, because also we need the extra time to process Iron Flame and what we've been through emotionally. So our next episode will release on November 28th. We're going to be doing tea on tropes, and doing a deep dive on all our favorite and least favorite tropes. You can also stay up to date with the latest tea on Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube by following us at Spill the Novel Tea on all the things. And while you're there, let us know, what have you been pouring over and what's your hot take? Who knows? If you have a spicy enough hot take, we may even roast you personally. You can request even one of us to respond to your hot take. We would love the opportunity to hear your thoughts and roast you like we roast each other. So
we can argue with you.
Or roast us even.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. We're open to being roasted. We're willing.
Welcome to the pod.
Exactly. Okay, so we will see y'all next week.